Okay, so now we could go a little crazy. And we kind of did here a little bit here with producing plastic and sulfuric acid and solid fuel all in the same production line. You can do the same kind of thing in Kirk McDonald. Kirk McDonald. By outputting plastic, you can output sulfuric acid. I think we did 100. And you can output solid fuel. Solid fuel. And then you have to, here in Kirk McDonald, you have to pick which recipe you want to use for the solid fuel. And we wanted 1.5 per second. So this should give us the same numbers of factories that Helmod did, at least with rounding, of course. Let me see if I can overlay this well here. Enjoying my yellow background. So we need 7.5. They're rounding to 8 here. 2 of these and 5 of these. Excellent. Solid fuel. 3 machines here. And then oil. 17.3. They're rounding to 18 here. Oh, I didn't add the lubricant in here. Oops. Lubricant. Yeah, 1 factory is 10 per second. Excellent. Lubricant is 1. Heavy to light cracking is 2. They're doing 1.3 here, so that's rounded here. And then 10.8 light to petroleum gas, and we have 11 here. So Kirk McDonald and Helmod match up basically exactly. There may be slight differences in the amount of 705 water, 350 crude. You can see that everything matches up perfectly, which tells you that they're both using the same math, which is good because wrong math is bad math. So you could do this with perhaps another type of combined output area. A great example that I know of is the rocket. When you're making a rocket, let's say we want. Actually, let's do this in Kirk McDonald first. So let's remove these extra recipes, and we'll switch this to space science. Because Kirk McDonald, you can start with space science. And let's say we want 1.5 per second. That tells us that we need 0.6 rocket silos, which is 0.15 rocket parts per second. But what we also need here is 0.0015 or 0.002 satellites per second. So just by picking space science, Kirk McDonald automatically puts in the dependent items you need all the way down to wherever you chose to hide the items. But the problem is, like we showed before, if you want to see, okay, well, what of this stuff down here goes into making rocket control units? How do I want to work that out? I need to click on rocket control units, and then I can say, oh, well, I'm going to have blue circuits coming in off of the bus. I'm going to hide that. Oh, I need to make these in a separate factory, so now I want to split that off and make these as a separate item, but I'm going to get the red and green circuits both from the bus, so I just need to have a half a belt of each going into making speed module 1. Okay, so back here we can unselect that. So now we're making speed module 1s here, and we're combining it with blue circuits coming off of the bus to make 1.5 per second rocket control units per second. Okay, that's good. And then you can do the same thing with each other constituent product and break it down and drill it down. You can also do the same thing in Hellmod. Let's say we wanted to... Hellmod, you cannot pick space science, so instead you have to pick the hidden rocket parts. So we want to show the hidden stuff and do the rocket parts here. Now this corresponds to this number here, 0.15. Which you have to be careful with because we want 1.5 per second. 100 rocket parts equals 1,000 science. So that's 10% of 1.5, which is, let me pull up the calculator, 1.5 per second times 100 rocket parts per 1,000 science. That's where we get the 0.15 from. Where we get the 0.0015 from on the satellites are, we need one satellite for every 100 rocket parts. So we divide that by 100 again to get 0.0015. Or we need one satellite for every 1,000 science, so that's 1.5 divided by 1,000. Either way, it's 0.0015. I always kind of have to back my way into those two numbers because they're kind of I don't know, arbitrary or not arbitrary. What's the word? Obtuse, maybe. In that you can't really tell, you can't really figure out exactly what you need for this to make it correspond to the amount of science that you're producing for, say, red, green, and the others. So we need 1.5, and this is, of course, rounding off to 0.2. We need 0.15 rocket parts. And we need, back here on the production line, we need satellites, which are... I always have a hard time finding satellites. There they are. We need 0.0015 satellites per second, which tells us that we need all of these input products. These should correspond exactly to the numbers that Hellmod has given us. 1.5 of these, 1.7 of these, or I'm sorry, that Kirk McDonald gave us, 1.575, so 1.6 of those. This doesn't match because most of these go into rocket control units. This is what you need for the satellite component. The same thing with the satellite, or the solar panels and the accumulators. They're also an input on the satellite. So then you add another production block for each one of these items. We're on the production line right now, so we want to produce rocket control units. This adds a separate block here for rocket control units that we can then drill into. Pick. Yeah, factory is that. Factory is not the human. So this is a production block making rocket control units. We need 60 machines without any moduling going on or beaconing going on. But we need to make these within that same production block. So we'll break out to that recipe. And we see that we need 7.5 per second of each, which is what we saw on Kirk McDonald when we drilled in. But we want this to come from the bus, so we leave this one alone. Now we back out here again, back to the production line. You can see this is a linked recipe, which is linked to this. And now we can see, as we saw before, that the rocket control units are missing from the inputs because it's all self-contained within this whole production line. We need a total of 1.7 low-density structures, which is a combined total of these two. So we'll click on one of them. It doesn't matter which, and it automatically brings the 1.7 in here. And we don't want the human to do this. We want assembly machine 2 to do it. And so we need this amount of copper, which is just over 2 yellow belts or just over 1 red belt of copper, a little bit of steel, and just over half a yellow belt of plastic. So at this point, and then you need 44 machines making this. So this is another block in this whole assembly. And now instead of low density structures being as part of the whole line input, now we have those 3 components. Solid fuel, or I'm sorry, rocket fuel, we could plan for that here, or we could plan for that in the mall, or in the oil planning, and belt the solid fuel in, or the rocket fuel. I keep saying solid fuel, sorry about that. I did notice though that the radar's not showing up, which is kind of weird that the radar's not showing up here. Oh, there's a limit to the display of the inputs. I think that was in the mod settings, and I usually go in and change this setting myself. Yeah, ingredient column, base. We need to add another column here. Let's see if we can increase this and make it behave a little better. Show it now? Yeah, shows it now. There. Oh, no, that just adds... Maybe it's because there's so few? I'm not sure why it's not carrying it out to the total input. But just for fun, let's plan the rocket fuel to be here with the rocket. So let's say we're belting in solid fuel to make rocket fuel to plan it here for the rocket. Well, that one's actually easy. We just need 63 machines making it. We also could plan to make our solar panels and our accumulators here. So, you know, say we're not going to do any solar in the entire base. Instead, we're going to do the solar and the accumulators just enough for the satellite, and we don't need to borrow it from where we're making it for the base. Or we don't want to. I can put these in the same block. I actually like to, I was right there already. And I actually like to put them in the same block. We need 2 factories of each. And these are all inputs from the bus, so we can leave those alone. So now if we back out to the entire production line, we see all of the inputs and all of the outputs and all of the child blocks for the 2 items we need to make. I'm not sure why they used to show up. If I went back and looked at my video of the production scrap mod, I'm almost positive the radar was here. I'm not sure why it's not showing up now, but the radar is needed. Since I make these in my mall, I usually just have the bots fly them over. And then if I'm making solar and accumulators for the base, I have the bots fly them over, borrowing them from the assemblies making them. But this is how you would do a more advanced multi-output production line. You can't pin the production line. There's no pin button here. You can only pin the production blocks. So I can pin this one, which just tells me to build the rocket silo, but I could pin this one and then work on this block. You can only pin blocks, you can't pin lines. Which is kind of unfortunate, but it's kind of the way that it works. If you built all of the stuff in here, in this block, instead of making it separate blocks, then you could pin this entire block. And I guess we could demonstrate that. Oh, I didn't want to delete the satellite though. Add the recipe for the satellite back. 0.0015. Except that it's not going to do them. It won't. So the problem is it won't do. Oh, I know how to accomplish it. So if we add this one in here, and then we break this one out like this. Good. Changing that to 3 apparently fixed our issue. And let's say we wanted to add a recipe here now for low density structures, and add a recipe here for solid fuel, and add a recipe here for solar panels and for accumulators. Now when we step out to the production line, we see that these 2 items require all this stuff made from this block. I think that block is right. So now if we click into this block, we see that we need all these inputs. We can also pin that and show that here as a block to plan with, to build with. So it kind of depends on what you intend on, how you intend on building, how you intend on using Hellmod to do your planning. The problem with this is it doesn't necessarily show you the sort of hierarchy of each component, but it does give you one plan to build from in this one panel. So, yeah, not so small anymore. But this would be 6 different active craft time panels that you'd have to click around into to make all your different stuff. So it's kind of, there's a trade-off. There's always a trade-off. But you can get rid of the beacons if you're not beaconing this stuff, and you can get rid of the ingredients if you're not working on the ingredients, if you're just laying out. But I don't know why you would. I don't know that I would ever go any smaller than this, because you need to know what you're inputting unless you have it memorized. And then you just need to know the machine counts, I guess. But if you're not doing beacons, you can hide the beacons column at least. So, the only other kind of example that I thought about showing is bots. So let's say we wanted to produce, this is another one of those kind of multi-output sort of scenarios. I have to find the bots. There they are. Yeah, that's true. The recipe could be cut off. But the problem is when you're reducing and showing, you don't have a choice as to which one hides. It's coded in, it's hard coded into the app. I don't know how many of these we actually want. Back out here, add a recipe for this, for these. Let's just say we want 1 of each per second. I don't know what this is going to look like as far as a factory goes. But let's say we wanted 1 logistic bot and 1 construction bot per second. I think that's probably a bit obscene. And I think we'll see that it's a bit obscene once we start digging into the factory. But the good thing is you can go back and edit and come back. Hi, hello, Terbrand Desai 762. Welcome to the stream. So, yeah. Wow. So yeah, this is way more than you normally produce. So, let's take this down maybe 0.1. That's probably a little more reasonable. Yeah, 6 machines. That's a little more reasonable as far as what you would do. You always go for 1 per second bots. Yeah, that's a bit obscene. Having 54 machines making making robot frames. So 0.1 per second for bots means you need 6 factories making flying robot frames, which means you need 3 factories making electric engines, which is also 3 factories making engines, 1 factory making gears, 1 factory making pipes. And so this is the stuff you would pull from your bus to make a modest 0.1 of each bot per second. Now, of course, if you need more of one or the other, or if you yeah, I mean, your outputs are. It just matters of how much stuff you want to build for making bots versus how much time you want to let the bots go ahead and accumulate. Obviously, once you fill up on your, if you have circuit conditions on your bots, and you limit, and you've hit your limit on one, then all the supplies except for the specific circuits for each one would go into the making the other bot instead. So long as you have enough circuits, so you have 0.4 green circuits here instead of 0.2, and 0.4 red circuits, which also shouldn't be a problem. As long as you have the capacity for that here on your inputs, then you can easily double one or the other when the one maxes out. So those are kind of the multi-output recipes that I wanted to talk about, with the oil outputs, the rocket outputs, and the robot outputs.